Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Leading Flourishing Schools Spotlight. Alistair Kerr here with you. And again, I'm joined today, really lucky, with Heidi and Pete from HPT Schools. Good morning, guys. Before we get into it, let's kick off with a quick barometer. Guys, I'm energized. Heidi, how about you?
I'm driven.
Great. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Let's go.
Yeah, love it. Alrighty. So, jumping in today, we're continuing our journey on the Platinum Rule, and we know there are a lot of tools in the toolkit. Today, we're looking actually at the last one, calling behavior protocol. But before we get there, Heidi, just quick recap. How do we get up to this point so far for those that haven't seen the previous episodes?
Yes, so our last two previous episodes, we've talked about how to understand our own communication preferences using the card model, not only understanding our strengths, but also what are some of the risks associated with that. Our next episode focused on our above and below the line chart. So, how do we actually create a system for how we work together based on what our risks and our benefits are in our color profile? So, I'm
Yeah.
excited to move on to the next stage today.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Because, of course, nobody is perfect. We all kind of dip below the line from time to time, even though we don't mean to. But we don't want to let it sit there. So today we're digging into this one. Pete, tell us what this is all about.
Yeah, look, it's pretty straightforward. It's developing a insurance policy or a safety net, writing down the steps we as a team agree to undertake. If one-on-one style, there's niggles. We're actually a little frustrated with one another, and so we're going to unpack that now. Yeah.
Great. And here's someone we're going to hear from quite a bit throughout this episode because he has a lot of great things to say about it.
Yeah, and I think to kick off then, the first thing we want to acknowledge up front is it's pretty widely accepted that basically all adults struggle with this stuff once we're, in the grip or in the pit. But in education, it's more likely to happen too because we're so busy dealing with so many challenges trying to care for our students and provide quality teaching and learning. And if we take that idea a little bit further, then if I can just, put my psychologist hat on for a moment. And you can see on the screen now that, you know, when we're emotionally triggered, when someone says something or doesn't say something, we go, hang on a minute, that's a bit cruel. I don't know. Oh, gee, I think they're having a go at me. Well, what that does is it completely changes our mental operating system because we have this thing called the stress response where we have this sort of sudden rush of adrenaline. And then we have to choose what to do with that. And as you can see here now, this is really important. And sometimes we have to slow it right down here just to reconnect with this with the schools. There are four options when I'm now upset with somebody else because I feel like they've offended me somehow: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fight, of course, very obvious. Flight, escape, avoidance. Freeze, you just do nothing at all. And then fawn, it comes from the trauma-informed practice space, but that's where you like feign agreement or nod or try to reassure or rescue it. That's called fawning. The point of this is simply to say the three responses of flight, freeze, and fawn, they're the only options we've got if we're strung out and upset at work because it's not socially appropriate to become assertive aggressive. And so when we're triggered, no matter how skilled we think we are, no matter how skilled we are when we're really calm, when we're triggered, the normal thing to do is avoidance. And if school leaders and people working in schools can get the hang of that, they can cut themselves some slack because a lot of the tension and unresolved conflict is happening through this loop, and this loop is entirely normal. But as you'll see in a minute, we can't allow that loop to continue. It's not productive.
Mm.
And so this idea of calling behaviors is to then replace that bottom section so that when we hit that marker, we've now got this protocol kicking in. And so even though we're a little worked up, we're like immediately going into what we practiced. And guess what? We enhance communication. We resolve conflicts. Suddenly the protocol kicks in. I'm saying things I never thought I could say respectfully back to you. And you're sitting there hearing it without getting any more triggered and going, yeah, okay, I appreciate that. So took a little bit of time there. Thank you for everybody's patience. But that's the clinical psychology, if you like, about why this little bit of our platinum rule puzzle is so important.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. And I guess if we kind of draw all that together and really sum it up, it's this idea that there's safety in structure. And the more structure we can put around these really tricky, difficult conversations, the safer people feel like they can to engage in them and, give them a go when they otherwise might not. So we want to actually now have a look at, well, what's the recipe that sits behind this this special protocol or this special recipe to make it all that little bit easier than it otherwise might be. As we dig into our safety net, there's of course three parts to this recipe. Pete, do you want to run us through what those three parts are?
Yeah, not a problem. And so again, the stuff on the screen now, they're examples, they're exemplars from real schools, so that makes it useful for us to see how it's done in practice. But any team can really construct the three-part recipe their way. The first part of the recipe is on the screen now. It's about how would we approach or prepare for this conversation. You know, once I decide I can't shake it off and I need to actually just clear the air, restore our working relationship, I can't just spring it on you. There must be a way to alert you, and they use a buzzword in this one called a reset conversation. And then there's a bit of a how do we organize our diaries to have time so that when we ask for this, we don't have to do it on the spot unexpectedly, but within a very short space of time, we're sitting together and listening. And as Heidi said earlier, remember, this is entirely connected to those below the line behaviors that when we're stressed, we accidentally fall into. The second step in the protocol is when we're together, how do we unpack whatever the issue is? Again, back to our personalities with the platinum rule. I'm a yellow, so I could be a bit of a waffler and go around and around. And that might confuse somebody who just wants the detail and to be very clear. You know, again, Heidi and I are quite opposites in this environment. So the ace in the hole here is S bar. S bar is an acronym for Situation Background Assessment Recommendation, and that's from clinical care and healthcare and military police, etc. If you've got to say something really quickly, really, that could be quite complex, that could be quite emotionally laden, you know, quite stressful. You're trained to unpack whatever it is you want to say through that lens of SBAR.
Just jumping in, Pete. Sorry, I think that we've got a really great resource outside of this session that I'd really recommend people to go check out on. Just a little video that unpacks that a little bit more and gives a couple of examples that indeed that they can practice before they give this stuff a go themselves. Let's jump into the last step then.
Look, the last bit's really the wrap up, and you want teams to say, okay, if it resolves itself and we can live and let live, or go, oh, sorry about that, next time I'll be a bit more sensitive to that issue, it's done. But we also need teams to write down the steps if it's not resolved. And in this case, they can either have another crack at it, maybe have a trusted third party just chat with them. No, this is still an informal resolution. It's not a formal complaint. It's not a formal mediation. This is a protocol for that informal step. Or they don't have to do this again if they've tried once, but if it's going to formalise now into a complaint, a grievance, we encourage team members to consider at least CCing the other person in, at least alerting them that that's the next step that they've chosen to take. So that if conflict does have to become more formalised and all of those difficult things, it's happening in the most psychologically safe way possible. Now,
Great, thank you, Pete. And I think the real kind of chestnut inside all of this too is that once our protocol is set up, and it is really as easy as kind of following the protocol. But the main thing is we want people to practice this when when they're kind of not stressed, so that when they are stressed, it just becomes all that more easy for them. So again, going back to the video and the extra training there. All right, hey, we want to jump out of having a look at our tool now and get over into some real world showcase. And actually, we're really lucky today, Heidi. This showcase is all about your school from when you were a principal back in the day, Helensvale State School. So the floor is yours. Tell us all about how this came to life in your school.
Yeah, thanks, Al. So we were working through the HPT systems in a really systematic way, and we created team profiles. We had above and below the line charts. So the next logical step was establishing those calling behaviour protocols. Part of the leadership team, we were using the protocol, and difficult conversations are never easy, and we don't suggest that it is. But when you've got a protocol, this kind of takes the emotion out of having the conversation. We're able to really have a conversation that's short, sharp, and really able to identify what the problem is and what a potential recommendation or solution might be moving forward. Because what we're actually trying to do is restore, repair, build on the working relationship between the two adults.
Mm.
Certainly not about having a go at somebody, which I think is what as adults we think it might be.
It takes us nicely into going deeper. So, Heidi, tell us all about what was the next step that your leadership team took to really kind of perfect this.
Yeah, so we've done a number of different strategies to really encourage teachers to use the calling behaviour protocol. And so what we eventually created with Pete's guidance was this flowchart. And this flowchart became like the foundation of conversations when a staff member would come to one of the leadership team and go, We've got this problem with a staff member. And so our first question is to that staff member, have you used the team protocol? Yes or no? And so it then became a really simple conversation to, well, if you have used it, can you cope with the situation? Yes. Great. Awesome. No, we're going to move to step three of the process. Have you used the protocol? No. Then tell me more about using the SBAR protocol, because sometimes they may not have felt
Mm.
comfortable in doing that on their own. So yes, they've used it. Is the team protocol the next step? Yes, great. Is there any support that they might need? Do they need one of us from the leadership team to sit and help them plan the conversation? Or no, just remind them of the protocol. If they didn't know more about the protocol and how to use that, it was easy for us to provide support. If they didn't want to use the protocol, that's it. Our job's done. We make a file note in our diary. We've got the protocols and the systems in place in the school to manage the difficult conversations, and the staff member has actually chosen not to follow that path.
Yeah, the thing I love in all of this, I suppose, is that in some schools that don't have the protocol as tight as this, they would always expect the leadership team to come in and solve things for them. But
Yes.
really, in doing this, you're empowering them to solve things for themselves. But you're also being really clear about the type of support that you're offering the staff across the school. So thank you so much for sharing, Heidi. Alrighty, everyone, we're going to start to bring things together soon, but we want to just take a quick pit stop on our wall of wisdom. And today we've got a really, really great one. Somebody who has done a whole lot of work in this space. We're hearing from Kurt Goodwin. So, Pete, can you just tell us a bit about Kurt's journey with this to bring us together?
Yeah, certainly. Kurt Goodwin is a principal I admire, who's deeply committed to supporting his staff and deeply committed to best practice in schools. And there's some fantastic stuff in volume one if you want to read the account there, and a brilliant 30-minute odd video that's actually quite fast to watch. What the quote is here is where Kurt highlights how it's essential to have protocols for difficult conversations. But then the real goal in this quote, as you can see it on the screen, is how Kurt honestly says, look, and I was there doing the training, when I first introduced this idea, he's kind of raising his eyebrows going, surely they can just have their chats. But then he goes on, and you guys can all check this out yourselves. He then explains that even in his own context, he had to have several reset conversations with staff who now felt more confident that they could share whatever their concerns were with him as a principal in their working relationship with him as a principal. And that's really important because, again, it's not, no one did anything wrong. Kurt's not doing anything wrong in his leadership, but what he's doing is saying, if you have got a niggle with me, if there's something not right in the mix, come talk to me about that. He was role modeling restorative practice at that peer-to-peer level with the adults, and I really love how he did that. The other thing, of course, is he's the owner of the phrase safety net, and again, that's where we get this idea from, that this becomes this lovely background safety net so that people can challenge each other, be rigorous, be proactive in being the best teachers they can be.
Great. Thank you, Pete. And again, I would really, really encourage people to go not only check out Kurt's article in Leadership Shares, but the 30-minute video where this is unpacked in a lot more detail. He tells it really, really well. So please do go check that out. All right, everyone. Hey, again, that was a great episode today. We're going to start to bring things together. But Heidi, I want to throw over to you, given your school's done such great work in this space, for the final words or closing thoughts for today's episode.
I think the really important message here is to just is stay the course and hold the line.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.